Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rob Tawab la Atham, Za Ach Yakam Yawam, Chagadol, Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawam from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam Kaya Hamlakat Hashemayim Kwara, repaying for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call Layam La La, but now Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachak, Wadashwa Mashana Laza Kwanim Nawu, Wamala Akim Shor Chagadol, which is our praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham. In the name Yahweh Shai delivers and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Za'aya Wab, this is Job, chapter 9, and we'll get verse 24. And it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Reading it again, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. All right, which, your hand represents your power. All right, so the power, all right, the power of the earth ultimately at this present time, has been given over to Esau Edom, which the Lord ultimately, has given Esau Edom this power over the earth. All right, so it says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, so the wicked have rulership, currently over the earth. So it says he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? All right, in which, this is multifaceted, you see, because ultimately he has covered over the images of, what is your image? Your image is, what you look like and, what you stand for, so ultimately Esau has covered over the image, in the time of iconoclasm, and that has done two things. All right. It's, covered over the actual images of the Lord, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and the Israelites, you see, but then also the image as in, again, what they stand for, all right, what the Lord stands for, and the Lord stands for righteousness, all right. When we look at, all right, the true representation of the Lord, all right, the Lord has certain characteristics, all right, he has certain characteristics with his name, all right, with what's being pushed across the planet Earth, all right, is the image and the representation or the character of JC, all right, and it's this image or this character of come as you are, the scriptures is all love, the Most High is all love, and so on and so forth, which that goes with his deception, you see, but that's what came with, the iconoclasm in the Renaissance era, where he covered over the images. All right, so it says he covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So if it wasn't Esau, even so-called, man, who would it be? All right, because we don't see, Ammonite, a Ammonite picture of who this world calls ignorantly JC or Jesus Christ. All right, the Lord's name is Yahweh Shai Hamashayach. All right, which it's been various different incorrect names, false names, you see, but the Lord has one true name, as it mentions in Acts the 4th chapter and the 12th verse. All right, Proverbs 30:4. But just going into the point in this lesson, the point I want to get out of this lesson was, pretty much how Esau has covered over the images and color representation in general, and more specifically just in the scriptures. So I don't want to Tazaz about Naya Paulo is with us as a beautiful edification through the spirit. And pretty much this lesson is entitled Ayan Bahasapar, which Ayan is the word for eye. Bahasapar is in the scriptures, but the word for eye, Ayan, it shares the same word for color, you see, because we see colors with our eyes. We have like rods and cones in our eyes that allow us to see color. All right. So let's get that definition for color representation or symbolism. So it says color symbolism. It says color symbolism is the use of colors to convey meaning or represent something. It says colors can evoke different emotions, responses, and their meanings can be culturally specific or primal. All right, now let's go back up to the top. It says color symbolism is the use of colors to convey meaning or represent something. All right, we see, all right, the image of Caesar Borgia, all right, JC going around. While the skin on that picture is not so-called white, all right, what they use the color for white for, as it says right here, it says purity, innocence, goodness, fresh, clean, easy, simplicity. All right, so that's what they ascribe to themselves. All right, whereas they're supposed to be the true red man. All right, they're thirsty for they're bloodthirsty. All right, but they have painted themselves as so-called white. All right, when really their skin is red, but mentally, or for those without understanding, they would think that white is so-called white is symbolic of, or is paired with purity, innocence, goodness, fresh, so on and so forth. You see, which it is in literal definition. You see, but what he's done is he's used the color white. He's ascribed it to a race, all right, and then he's ascribed that race, all right, to a people that's supposed to be truthfully red, all right. So continuing on, it says, color symbolism is the use of colors to convey meaning or represent something. It says colors evoke different emotions, responses, and their meanings can be culturally specific or primal. It says cultural meanings. Colors can have different values in different cultures. For example, in Chinese culture, red symbolizes good fortune, while in Eastern cultures, it represents luck. But the point I wanted to get was that different colors pretty much go into different things. And this is why, he has ascribed, Jake, are you, more specifically, the tribe of Judah. All right. And then, different, like Reuben, Reuben in this society has been called so-called black. All right. But when people without understanding in this society see someone with dark brown skin, they automatically think, okay, these words right here, but it says formal, classic, which more specifically it goes into the point I wanted to get was death, mystery, evil, ignorance. All right. Because that's what one thinks of when they think of black. All right. And this is why he ascribed it to what they call race. All right. But then he ascribed it to specifically Judites. But then you also have, those of, the other tribes that are ascribed this as well. But chiefly, this word is used, all right, to paint the picture of, all right, well, he's pure, all right, and whoever is black, all right, well, that's negative, all right, that brings bad vibes. You see, when it's really the reverse, all right. But nevertheless, let's get a couple precepts. Because in the scriptures, all right, the image that he has pushed out, all right, is the image of a so-called white man, all right, which really they are the Edomites in the scriptures, and their skin is red, all right. But the image he's pushed out, all right, is a false image, So let's get a couple precepts just going into this. This is Acts, because again, that term for black, all right, when it's ascribed to a nation, all right, it's no nation of black, all right, but when it's ascribed to a nation, or when it's used as an exonym or a byword, all right, it's used in a derogatory sense. So this is Acts chapter 13 and verse 1. It says, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manon, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. All right, in which, they have various different ways, they'll write it, they'll say this says Niger, but, that goes to the same thing. Like when we look at Nigeria or the country of Niger, it all goes into the same thing. Because when we get this word right here, all right, it says black. All right, and we understand that when it's paired with black, the byword for that would be nigger. All right, so let's get this in the NLT as well. All right, this is Acts chapter 13 and verse 1 NLT. It says, among the prophets and teachers of the church at Antioch of Syria were Barnabas, Simon, called the black man, Lucius from Cyrene, Manon, the childhood companion of King Herod Antipas, and Saul. In which that this ties into what we got, Job 9:24. He's covered the faces of the true judges. All right, both in physicality and then also what the judges stand for, which is righteousness. All right, so let's also get this. This is first Maccabees chapter 3, and we'll get verse 48. All right, and it says, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. All right, and that account can be found in Wisdom of Solomon. I believe it's the 14th chapter. To pretty much to where see the image of Caesar Borgia. All right, and his father pretty much got his image made, you know, so that they can pretty much push him forth as an idol. All right. So let's also get this. This is let me see. This is Songs chapter 1, and we'll get verse 5. All right, because we're going into the true complexion of the Israelites. All right, this is Songs 1 and 5. It says, I am black but calmly, O ye daughters of Yerushalayim, as the tents of Quadar, as the curtains of Solomon. All right, in which black, that goes into, one keep going, verse 6, it says, look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. In which the point that I wanted to get was, you know, if the sun looks upon you, scriptures go into how, or the word for sun, all right, and the halat bayath in the alphabet, it ultimately goes into how the sun speaks. You know, so if the sun is speaking or if the sun is looking upon you, you know, pretty much, you know, that'll be a very dark complexion, all right, someone that's melanated. All right, so going back up to verse 5, it says, I am black but calmly, O ye daughters of Yerushalayim, as the tents of Quadar, in which Quadar, pretty much, you know, that goes into a lineage of peoples. All right, and you know they were dark complexioned. All right, it says as the curtains of Solomon. All right, which again, you know, the true Israelites are various different shades of brown. All right, nobody is truthfully black. All right, I'm actually get this word for black, and it says shachar, and it says dusky, but also jetty. It says black. It says blackish color of the face, you know, so it says blackish. All right, so pretty much it's just going into something that's of a dark complexion. It says to be dim or dark in color. It says let me see. Pretty much is going into the darkness of color, you know, because when we go into the songs, pretty much, you know, they are it's poems, you know, so sometimes, you know, you in poems you got metaphors, you got similes, which the simile is a similitude. Scripture say the Lord speaks in similitudes, Hosea 12 and verse 10. All right, so pretty much this is a metaphor for dark skin or pretty much melanation. All right, so let's also get this. This is Hosea chapter 7, and we'll get verse 8. And it says, Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned. And when you look at Ephraim, all right, so-called Puerto Ricans, you know, they come in all different facets of color, or of all different facets of the color brown, all right, from, you know, super, super light to very, very, very dark. All right, but then also Ephraim going into the Northern Kingdom. All right, Northern Kingdom is various different facets of brown, you know, again, looking like when if you was to have a pancake and you put it on a stove or whatever, on the pan, pretty much one side by cooking it, it's gonna be very dark, but then you'll have the side that has the bubbles in it. All right, and it'll be very, very light, and that's essentially how, you know, how Northern Kingdom is. You know, they come in various different colors, you know. So let's also get this. Let's get the image of the Lord. All right, this is Daniel Allah chapter 10, and we'll get verse 5. It says, Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. All right. And what, you know, so-called Christians, you know, because when we go into Revelation, it goes into the color of the Lord Yahweh Shai's feet. All right. And then right here, this is talking about the Most High Yahweh. You know, so a so-called Christian, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, the Lord Yahweh Shai was, they'll say JC, but his name is Yahweh Shai, which means he delivers. But they'll say, oh, he was olive colored. All right. But then you might even have some that say, you know, well, he had, you know, dark feet, you know, but then like his face was pale white, you know, which that wouldn't make any sense, you know. So reading this again, it says his body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass. You know, in which your arms and your feet, you know, they all one color, they're the same color. You know, so pretty much polished brass. You know, going to something that's very dark complexioned. All right, let's get this in the. Let me see. Burnished. All right, it says burnished. All right, when something is burnished, it says quick movement of rubbing. So pretty much something that's like a burned texture, you know. So polished brass, you know, going to something that's very dark brown complexion. It says in the voice of his words, like the voice of a multitude, you know. So you know, the Lord, you know, is the ultimate Jake. All right, and Jake, you know, in this society is very feared. All right, so it says in the voice of his words, like the voice of a multitude. The reason I wanted to get that point was, you know, when you look at, all right, when you look at all right, Jake, more specifically Judah, all right, a lot of times, you know, Esau be, you know, so soon as Jake say something in a room, you know, he draws attention to his voice. All right, and essentially that's because Jake was created in the image of the Lord, you see. But going into this right here, it says, and the voice of his words, like the voice of a multitude. You know, if you was to go into a basketball game, all right, and everybody's talking, they don't even have to be talking super loud, but if everybody's at a somewhat of a moderate tone, all right, it's gonna be a vibration in that basketball room or the in the gym. You know, so pretty much it's going into how, you know, the Lord speaks with austereness. All right, and it's a voice that you feel it. You know, you pretty much how austere the Lord talks. You see, because the Lord Yahweh Shai also comes, you know, in this same faction. All right, so nevertheless, let's get Revelation chapter 1, and we'll get verse 13. And it says, verse 13, Revelation 1 and 13, it says, verse 12, and I turned to see the voice that spake with me, and being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. All right, verse 14 again. His head and his hairs were white like wool, in which when it says white like wool, you know, that's going into the texture. It says as white as snow. When it says as white as snow, it's talking about the color. All right, because even, you know, the Lord Yahweh Shai, you know, he's the ultimate Judite. You see, so back in slavery times, you know, they would call him Snowball. All right, and that pretty much that term is ascribed, you know, to older Jake, you know, because they got that woolly texture, and their hair is also white. All right, so how much more so for the Lord Yahweh Shai? You know, he's all wisdom. All right, and he's the ultimate Judite. All right, so reading verse 14 again, it says, his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. Verse 15, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. You see, so if you was to burn anything in the oven, it's going to be very, very dark, you know. So fine brass, it's a very dark complexion, all right, very melanated. All right, the Lord isn't olive colored, all right. The Lord, you know, he isn't a so-called white man, all right. He will be considered a Judite, you know, if he was walking the earth today. It says, and as if they burn in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. All right, which the Lord speaks very austerely. All right, so I'm gonna get one more and that'll be it. But this is we'll get 2 Corinthians chapter 10. We'll get verse 4, and it says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Most High to the pulling down of strongholds." And a chief stronghold that has been upon our people, all right, is the image of the Lord. All right, in which, you know, the Lord has you know, bestowed us, you know, with His Spirit, as pursuant to Isaiah the 60th chapter in the first verse. All right. And pretty much the Lord has ultimately, you know, sent forth His Spirit amongst the planet Earth, and the Spirit is dwelling with the elect. All right. And the elect are ultimately bringing out this word to pull down those strongholds. All right. Because one of them chief strongholds was the image of the Lord, and then also what the Lord stood for. In verse 4, it says, verse 5, casting down imaginations. You know, that's an imagination. Let me get this word for imagination. It says imaginations, G3053. It says a computation, a reasoning It says such as is hostile to the Christian faith in which we understand that the so-called, or the word for Christian would be Hamashayach Yam, all right, the followers of the anointed, all right, which is imagination, all the different images and things and teachings of men that is pushed alongside with the scriptures, or the scriptures with those that without understanding isn't pushed forth in its true capacity. It's not broken down the correct way. All right. 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 5, it says, casting down imaginations. The truth of the scriptures cuts down all those lies, all those deceptions, all those false things that are not true in the scriptures. It says, in every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of the Most High, and bring it into captivity every thought to the obedience of Hamashayach. So it's this word that ultimately is pulling down those strongholds, because the scriptures say that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will cover the earth as it does the sea. So I'm gonna get one more and that'll be it. Zayashaya, this is Isaiah chapter 28, and we'll get verse 17. It says, judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet, and the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters shall overflow the hiding place. And what's the ultimate waters? The waters is talking about these scriptures. The scriptures is what's ultimately, if you was to take water and throw it on anything, it's going to reveal whatever the filth and stuff, whatever filth is on any specific type of object, so the filth that's amongst this planet Earth. All right, well, this truth, or the true living waters, is pretty much washing away those lies, so ultimately we're seeing the true characteristics, and ultimately the Lord has revealed, his name unto us, you see. So yeah, I just want to go into Ayan Bahasapar, which is color in the scriptures, or color in the Bible, or in the book more specifically. Adawan Tazaza Banaya Palos, what else a beautiful edification to the spirit. Wadawan Tazah Atam Yash Layla Tawab, Lord, as well. You have a good night. Wa shalom lakam. With just peace and to you all. Shalom, shalom.